Welcome back to Lesson Mentor, and in today's lesson, creativity will meet deliciousness. You'll transform this plain cheese pizza into a mouth-watering masterpiece loaded with someone's favorite toppings. You'll practice making a selection, copying, pasting, and moving that selection into place, as well as rearranging layers as you need to make your pizza look magnificent. Here are your directions. Open this document in Photoshop. Number 1, click on the Move tool and make sure the Show Transform control box is checked in the menu bar. Number 2, choose the Selection tool to select, copy, and paste the pizza toppings. Number 3, move the pizza toppings into position on the pizza to make it irresistible. Tips: use keyboard shortcuts for copy, paste, and move to work quickly. To flip an image, go up to Edit, Transform, and flip horizontal. You could also flip vertical. I will show you how to do one of the toppings, and then you will continue and try to use all of the toppings on your pizza, not necessarily overloading it so we can't see the pizza slices, but not leaving so little that it's like no one would pay for it. So make it look good. When you are finished, you will turn it into your teacher as they have requested. If you understand the written directions, perfect. You can continue doing this on your own, but stick with me as I do one of the pizza toppings because I want to make sure you understand how to use an adjustment layer to adjust the lighting of your toppings to match your pizza. So I will start with using the pepperoni. You can choose whatever topping you want first. I will unlock the background layer and switch to my object selection tool. If you want to practice with some other selection tools, you can do that if you're a little bit more advanced. If not, we're just going to use the object selection tool and let it work for us. With the object selection tool, you can see how it's drawing a pink line around each of the objects. When that is present, then that means the computer's already locked in. It's got it. Photoshop can handle it for you. All you have to do is left click with your mouse and it will make the selection for you without having to draw a rectangle around the item. So I'm just going to click here because I've got that pink line running around. And if I move, you can see that I've got my marching ants, I call them, going around the pepperoni, and all I need to do is copy, paste, and move that into position. Okay, so I've got my pepperoni. I've got the handlebars here so I can make this a little bit smaller. A tip as you are working with your toppings, if you are finding that the handlebars are getting in the way of you being able to move your object, you can turn off the Show Transform control box so that you can move that more easily. And then if you need to change the size, increase or decrease, just recheck that Show Transform control box and do that. And you can see how the light on the pepperoni is a little bit different than on the pizza itself. To make it look a little bit more realistic, we can adjust the lighting for the pepperoni. I'm going to go to the adjustment layer icon, click that open, and I can use any of these to adjust it. I'm going to work with curves today. So with the curves adjustment layer, we see we have our representation of black here down in the bottom right hand corner and white all the way here on the right corner. And we've got our histogram running through the middle. And as we shift this line, then you can make adjustments to the lighting. But watch what happens when we do that. So I'm going to adjust some of the white and maybe bring it up or down, just so you can see that it's shifting. But if you look at the pizza, is it affecting the whole pizza? If you said yes, you are correct. And here's why. Right now, the curves layer, for one, is on top of layer 0. But even if I bring that up above layer 0 and on top of my pepperoni layer, and I'm going to label that to make it easier to see. If I click back on my little icon here for curves, but if I shift it again, you can see that it's shifting everything on my document. And that's not what I want. I just want it to affect the pepperoni. So what we need to do is create a clipping mask. And there are 3 different ways to create a clipping mask. I'm going to show you all 3 of them, and you can decide which one you want to use. First way is we can right click on the layer that we want to clip, which is our curves adjustment layer. So I can right click here on the outside and go down to create clipping mask. Boom. So now if I shift this, I see that it's only affecting the pepperoni, and that's what we want. So that's one way to create a clipping mask. I'm going to go back. Another way to create a clipping mask is with the keyboard shortcut. So if I bring my mouse down in between my layers and hold Option on the keyboard, I see I get this black arrow that points down, which means it's ready to clip the layer above to the layer underneath. So if I just left click now, it clips my curves layer to my pepperoni layer. And if I want to confirm, if I make an adjustment here, we can see that it's only shifting the pepperoni. I'll go back one more time. Another way to do that, probably the slowest way to do it, is to go up to layer, with layer, my curves layer selected, go to create clipping mask. And it's the same outcome. I actually realized there is one more way to create a clipping mask, and that would be with the keyboard shortcut for creating clipping mask. So if you go back to your curves layer and you go up to layer, back to create clipping mask, you see the keyboard shortcut. Since I'm on a Mac, it's telling me that that shortcut is Option, Command, and the letter G. On a PC or Windows computer, that will be Alt, Control, and the letter G. And now we see the clipping mask. So there are multiple ways to create a clipping mask. You can decide which method works for you, so try them all. So now all I have to do is just fine tune it and get pretty close to what I think looks a little bit more realistic. So depending on which object you selected, you may have to make that adjustment a little differently than how I'm making an adjustment on my histogram. So just like there are multiple ways to create a clipping mask, there are multiple ways to work with your curves layers. So you have these icons down here, and if you hover over them, you can see what they do. So in the event you're like, I want to look and see what this looked like before I started, then you can turn off the visibility of the layer here with this icon instead of going down here, since it's just so much closer to your histogram. It's just right there. So I can toggle that on and off. If you decide you don't want that layer at all, you can click the trash can icon and it gets rid of it. I'm going to undo that because there's multiple ways to do it. So I can use the trash can icon here, or I can click on the layer down in the layers panel and press delete or backspace accordingly and get rid of it. So you have multiple ways to do it. Just be aware and don't be afraid to try to click on different things. Okay, so one more thing I'm going to do is add a drop shadow to my pepperoni layer. So I'm going to click the pepperoni, go to effects and drop shadow. And I'm gonna make sure that preview box is checked and move this out of the way just a little bit. Zoom in so we can see this here. Just the angle where the light is coming from. I think that would be a little bit better. And just make it maybe a little wider here. Okay. So I can do that. And if I like that, I'm ready to make a copy of this pepperoni. So I'll hold Option on my keyboard or Alt on Windows keyboard, get my double arrow to come up, and I can just drag out a copy. And I can drag out as many copies as I want. And I'm going to turn off Show Transform Control and make it a little simpler. And then as I'm making the adjustments, then I can also have multiple, still remembering that I'm going to have to add my other toppings on here as well. Give yourself a challenge and see if you can do all of the toppings, or at least 5 of them. I would say I would accept 5. Just like in real life, most of the toppings aren't going to be the same size, so you probably would want to go in and just make some bigger, make some smaller to make it look a little bit more realistic. And then when you're done with that, then you'll go in and you'll do another topping. Okay, so this is your assignment. I'm not going to go through all of the toppings with you because I think you probably have done this several times already. Just make sure that you're back on layer 0. Choose your next topping. Copy, paste and move it and work with it the same way that you did with the pepperoni. And just kind of positioning those. Now what you want to be aware of is just the uniformity. So instead of having all of these face the same way, I can just bring my mouse outside of the olive a bit and just turn it so that they're not all pointing the same way. So I can just click this one and rotate it. And maybe rotate this one and make it a little smaller, maybe go the other way. And I can rotate this one. Now it may not be necessary with the olives, but you can go up to Edit, Transform, and then you can flip horizontal or flip vertically. And then just begin to drag out other copies of the ones that you've rotated. So maybe I want a small one to go over here, another small one maybe over there. And as you are doing your adjustments, maybe you want to have, an olive be underneath a slice of pepperoni. Just remember, if you need to reorder your layers, you can do that. You would just make sure the pepperoni is on top and the olive is on the bottom. So your objective is to make a realistic looking pizza. Create those adjustment layers and adjust the brightness so that it matches the cheese on the pizza. But this is pizza time, and I hope you have a good time creating your own. And if you enjoyed this tutorial, stay tuned for the next one.